Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said it plainly. Elon Musk said it at Davos. Sam Altman has said it repeatedly. The limiting factor in the global AI race is not algorithms. It is not chips. It is not talent. It is electricity. Whoever can build and power the most compute infrastructure wins. And right now, the United States is losing the energy race it did not realize it was in. This is not a story about China building better AI models. It is a story about a strategic insight that China grasped years before Washington did. That AI is fundamentally an infrastructure competition, that infrastructure requires energy at a scale most people have not internalized, and that the country that builds the cheapest, most abundant, and most reliable power supply for that infrastructure will have a structural cost advantage in AI deployment that compounds over decades. China understood that. It built for it. And the gap it has opened is not theoretical. It is already showing up in the numbers. Start with the scale of what AI actually requires from the power grid, because until you understand the magnitude, the strategic stakes do not register properly. Data centers already consume roughly 415 terawatt-hours of electricity globally per year. The United States accounts for about 45% of that. By 2035, global data center power demand is expected to hit 1,026 terawatt-hours, a 255% increase from today. The U.S. alone is projected to see demand surge to 430 terawatt-hours by 2035. For context, that is close to 12% of the entire country's projected annual electricity demand consumed by data centers alone. Training a single frontier AI model can consume as much electricity as tens of thousands of homes use in a year. Inference, running the model at scale for millions of users, consumes orders of magnitude more. The data centers being built right now by Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet to support AI workloads are not incremental additions to the grid. They are city-sized power draws arriving faster than the infrastructure to support them has been built. At least 36 data center projects in the U.S. were blocked or stalled between May 2024 and June 2025 alone, not because of lack of capital or demand, but because there was not enough power. American data centers currently pay electricity rates that in many markets are more than double what Chinese data centers pay. And a project that takes years to permit and build in the U.S. can move from planning to operation in months in China. There is a secondary bottleneck that compounds the power problem: the U.S. electricity grid itself. The transmission infrastructure that would move power from where it could be generated cheaply, the windy plains of the Midwest, the sun-baked deserts of the Southwest, to where the data centers are being built is decades behind where it needs to be. Interconnection queues, the process by which new power projects get connected to the grid, have backlogs measured in years. The IEA estimates that the U.S. natural gas sector will be the largest source of additional power supply for data centers through 2030, not because it is the preferred solution, but because it is the fastest one to permit and build given the existing grid constraints. The U.S. is defaulting to fossil fuels for AI infrastructure not out of ideology, but out of bureaucratic inertia. That is the electron gap, and it is widening. The reason China has a structural energy advantage is not accidental. It is the product of a decade of deliberate, centrally coordinated infrastructure investment that was explicitly linked to the country's long-term technology ambitions. In the first half of 2025 alone, China more than doubled its solar installations from the prior year. It now accounts for 67% of global solar installations, up from 54% just 12 months earlier. China is on track for 1,400 gigawatts of combined solar and wind capacity in 2025. The United States will reach roughly 350 gigawatts. China plans to add 212 gigawatts of solar and 51 gigawatts of wind in a single year. The U.S. will add less than 100 gigawatts commute. And then there is nuclear, the power source that matters most for AI, because AI does not care about weather. Data centers need power that is always on. Solar is intermittent. Wind is intermittent. Nuclear is not. China approved 10 additional nuclear reactors in April 2025 alone, with a total investment exceeding $27 billion. Its nuclear generation capacity is expected to reach 65 gigawatts by the end of 2025, 200 gigawatts by 2030, and 400 to 500 gigawatts by 2050. It is already operating the world's first commercial fourth-generation high-temperature gas-cooled reactor, and its first small modular reactor is scheduled for completion in 2026. Since 1990, the United States has approved only 5 nuclear applications and built 2 new plants. 2. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has become, in the words of people tracking this closely, a model of bureaucratic inefficiency. U.S. nuclear capacity is actually projected to decline by 2040 under current trajectories, not grow. Before we go further, if understanding where the real long-term AI competition is being won and lost is the kind of analysis you come here for, subscribe now. We cover this every week. China has also done something strategically elegant that gets almost no coverage in Western business media. It has physically integrated its data center build-out with its renewable energy surplus. The Eastern Data Western Computing Initiative, sometimes called the East-West Data Project, deliberately relocates energy-intensive AI data centers to China's resource-rich western regions, Inner Mongolia, Qinghai, Xinjiang. These are areas with abundant wind, solar, and hydroelectric capacity, cooler temperatures that reduce cooling costs, and electricity prices far below the national average. The data gets processed in the West, where power is cheap, and the results are transmitted east, where the users are. China's government has mandated that its major data hubs increase their share of renewable electricity, and by 2035, renewables and nuclear are projected to account for nearly 60% of the electricity powering Chinese data centers. The U.S. approach is the mirror image, almost entirely market-led and geographically concentrated near population centers where land, power, and permitting are most constrained. The result is that American hyperscalers are paying premium prices for power in markets where supply is tightest, while their Chinese competitors are building in markets where supply was deliberately overbuilt. The investment numbers reflect how seriously both sides now understand the stakes, though the strategies diverge sharply. U.S. tech giants, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet, are projected to spend $630 billion on data centers and AI infrastructure in 2026 alone, according to Morgan Stanley. That is an extraordinary number. Chinese tech companies are spending far less in absolute terms. But Chinese tech companies are also operating in a country where the government is building the energy infrastructure around them at state expense, where permitting happens in months rather than years, and where electricity costs half what it costs in the U.S. Alibaba moved in January 2026 to form a joint venture with China National Nuclear Power to secure dedicated nuclear generation for its AI data centers, mirroring moves by Microsoft, which signed a deal to restart the 3 Mile Island reactor, and Meta, which is pursuing nuclear partnerships of its own. The difference is that in China, this is a coordinated national strategy. In the U.S., it is companies trying to solve individually a problem that requires systemic infrastructure investment to fix. Here is the bottom line. The U.S. currently leads in advanced AI chips and frontier model development. That is a real and significant advantage, and it should not be dismissed. But the history of technology competition suggests that infrastructure advantages compound in ways that are very difficult to overcome once they are established. A country that can run AI inference at half the electricity cost has a structural price advantage in every AI-powered product and service, forever or until the infrastructure gap closes. China did not get here by accident. It got here by deciding years ago that AI was an energy competition first, and investing in that premise at national scale before the rest of the world had finished debating whether the premise was correct. That sequencing advantage, building the energy infrastructure before the AI demand fully arrived rather than scrambling to build it after, is the thing that is genuinely difficult to replicate in retrospect. The US is now catching up. The question is whether the permitting timelines, the regulatory frameworks, and the political will to build large-scale energy infrastructure can compress fast enough to matter, or whether the electron gap becomes the defining asymmetry of the AI era. Thanks for watching. If this changed how you are thinking about the AI race and what actually determines who wins it, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.